Praise the Lord. This is Richard again coming to you with our weekly Break It Down video for our life group. I pray that in this series of Ordinary People, Big God, God has spoken to you. As we come to the conclusion today, we want to talk about another ordinary person called Nehemiah that God used to do great things. One of the things that marked Nehemiah's life is that he knew there was something great about his life and about his work. Yes, he was ordinary. He served under the king as a cupbearer. But when he understood what God was calling him to do, he realized that God had greatness assigned to his life. In Nehemiah chapter 6, as he was trying to rebuild the wall, if you know the story, some people called Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem, the Arab, and other enemies tried to discourage them. And they tried to tell him, Nehemiah, calm down. Stop building the wall. Stop doing the thing that God is calling you to do. And so Nehemiah said, I am doing a great work and I'm unable to come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? And they sent the messages to me 4 times, worded in this way, and I answered them with the same wording. Nehemiah had a stubbornness in his heart, knowing that God had called him to do something great. I believe that each one of us, God has called us to do a great work. Other versions call it an important work. Everywhere God has placed you, He has called you to do an assignment. And because He's the one who has assigned you that work, it means it's important. It must not be taken lightly. Maybe at your work, in your marriage, in taking care of your children, wherever God has placed you, He's assigned you a very important work. And 3 things that I want us to do today as we think about this message that we had on Sunday. One, we must respond to what God is calling us. We respond to God through prayer. When Nehemiah knew about what was happening in his hometown in Jerusalem and the broken walls, he went to God in prayer. You see, God sometimes will put burdens on our hearts, and what He requires of us is to take them back to Him in the place of prayer. Secondly, we need to understand, what does the great thing mean? I believe that every assignment God gives us, He puts people in our lives that help us to know how to do, to carry out what God has asked us to do. And that was it for Nehemiah. God gave him the king, who gave him the opportunity to go and serve. The king gave him soldiers to protect him, and Nehemiah found co-laborers with whom he said, let's go and rebuild the wall. I believe that God has given each one of us those 3 people. He has given us the kings or the queens in our lives. He has given us army and horsemen, people who are helpers or vision protectors, and co-laborers, people who join hands with us that help us to accomplish that which God has asked us to do. And greatness comes not in temporary things, but in eternal things. We must fix our eyes to say, is that what I'm doing, is there an eternal significance to it? But also to remember that anything that is worth building is something that God is building. God is interested in building His church, and He says that the gates of hell will not prevail against it. If you're asking, what does greatness look like in my life? Everything that you do must be building towards the kingdom of heaven, towards participating and building the local church. Those are the things I want to encourage you, and also to remember to rely on God's strength. So Nehemiah would pray these short prayers, and he would say, God, help me. And in this time when he was facing opposition, he simply prayed a prayer that said, God, strengthen my hands. In other words, he needed his hands. He needed the hands of his co-laborers to be strengthened so that they would keep doing that which God has asked them to do. What is your prayer today? Where are you facing opposition in the things God has called you to do? Rely on His strength. May God bless you as you continue in the conversations this week in the break it down video in your life group. May God bless you.